let me know how you're doing, what you're doing. It's a Friday. Happy Friday. I'm just sharing my live video over here on TikTok. And the topic today is forgiveness. Okay. But first, I'm going to do a frequency for the day so we can all get ourselves together. And then we're going to talk about forgiveness. Forgiveness is not what you've been told, right? How do you actually forgive, and why would you even want to? That's the question. And I'm not about to give you you got to forgive so that you don't drink the poison or whatever they be saying. What they be saying. Forgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping it hurts the other person or something like that. That's not where we're going with this. I want to talk about what people don't talk about, forgiveness. So welcome. What I need you to do is begin to tap the screen, and then we'll get to it. How y'all doing this morning? I don't think this is going to be a live video. I mean, a long video. It is a live video. Go ahead and tap the screen if forgiveness is something you want to talk about. And I really want to talk about it in a deep way. Not, oh, you just need to forgive. You need to forgive and forget. No. Let's really talk into why forgiveness is difficult in the way that we've been taught and what we can actually do about it. Okay. Hey, babe. All right, forgiveness. That's the topic. So I was having a lot of thoughts about forgiveness this morning. And so I'm just going to share with you my thought stream and then see where we end up, okay? Because forgiveness is something that we all need, yet it can feel really elusive, right? So we get most of our thought processes about forgiveness from the Christian faith, right? But what I know is even the advice given from the Christian faith isn't particularly accurate, okay? And I want to talk about why, right? So let's examine some of the common phrases that people give. One of the scriptures is, has to do with turning the other cheek. If your neighbor or your brother smite thee, turn the other cheek. Or if they ask you to go 1 mile, go 2. Or if they ask you for something, give them your code or something like that, right? Hey there, how y'all doing? How y'all doing? Thank you. And so we get concerned about being moral, being the bigger person, being positive. Yet there still remains some bitterness, some resentment, some hurt feelings over a past situation, right? You ever thought you forgave only to find out later that you think you hadn't, or you thought you were over something and later you found out, hey, I'm not quite over it. Hey there. Have you ever had that experience where you thought you forgave, but then you realize, hey, I'm not really over that, or you're still mad, or something like that? What I know is a lot of people try to forgive, number one, before they are aware of how the thing actually affected them in a deep way. They know something happened, they know it hurt, they know someone else is at fault, and so they try to forgive the person who is at fault. But a new beginnings, but we still have all the things I just mentioned, how it affected them, what they thought about it, conclusions they've drawn from it, etc. And so all those things remain unresolved. So what happens? You make a decision to forgive, but then those things are still very much active. So when they get activated, you go back into the pain again. Right? Hey there. You go right back into the pain. And so I want to talk about that. I just wanted to let y'all know what I'm talking about so you could decide whether or not you want to stay. Hey there in YouTube. Hey there, TikTok. Y'all tap the screen, share the video, and let me know. Let me know if this is something that you're interested in. Forgiveness. I'm looking for some response. If you're watching the replay, stop and say yes. Yes, I'm interested. Forgiveness, forgiveness, forgiveness. Yes, New Beginning said yes. Anybody else interested in talking about this from a perspective other than what we typically hear? Hello there, hello there. My name is Veronica Marie. Veronica Marie. All right, so I'm live over here on YouTube as well, and I'm live on TikTok. So if y'all see me kind of toggling, that's why. So the first thing about forgiveness is that something hurtful happened. A lot of times you want the person who has hurt you to acknowledge your pain. You want some acknowledgement, right? You want accountability. But in many cases, they don't give it. Many cases, they're not available to give it. Many cases, they don't even see why they need to give it, right? Can you relate to that? I want some interaction here. Hey there, Tris. Right? You want them to acknowledge that you are in pain. You want them to take accountability for the part that they played in that. But a lot of times they are unable to see. They don't see it the way that you do, or maybe they're not even there. They're no longer in your life, or they have transitioned or something like that, right? So how do we forgive in those cases? But let me go here real quick. You think that their acknowledgement and their accountability is going to help you, right? And it might on some level, but it's not going to heal in a deep way. Think about it. Haven't you ever brought something up to someone and they acknowledged and said, I'm sorry? And you still had the pain inside, so you still continue to re experience whatever it is that you were experiencing. Have you ever experienced that? Where you told the person, hey, you hurt me, this bothered me, and they said, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that, and you still had hurt, right? You still had pain. You still maybe struggled to reconcile with them and even wonder, if you really could. Have you ever experienced that? I'm looking for experience here, because you think that acknowledgement and accountability is going to like help significantly, but it usually doesn't. And that's why people say you can't expect the person to hurt who hurt you to heal you. That's why they're saying that, because accountability and acknowledgement outside of yourself really comes farther down the line. So, what is it that needs to be accounted for and what needs to be acknowledged? Well, in a deep way, you have to explore and acknowledge how you were affected by that situation. Okay? You have to explore and acknowledge how you experienced that situation. For example, and deal with self, right? And I want to talk about how to deal with self, because sometimes people are not going to give that acknowledgement, and sometimes they're not there. And even when they do, you still struggle, right? So when something happens, right, you feel some kind of way because you have interpreted it some kind of way. Okay. So what we need to know is, what did you feel? Right, 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 right. Yes, Cornell. So what did you feel is the first question. Okay, when you're trying to heal and you're trying to move through a process of forgiveness, it begins within self. And I really wish that the person outside could make it all better, but usually it doesn't. This is just the lay of the land, right? So I'm coming to you in reality. And I want to give a realistic, practical approach to the process of forgiving. Okay, so the first question is, what did you feel? You got to put some words on that. When the thing happened, chances are you didn't say what you wanted to say. Maybe because you were in shock, maybe because you didn't have the words, maybe because you didn't understand. So it's important to acknowledge your emotions during the situation. What did you feel? With my clients, what I really love is to have them write a letter to me telling me what they really wanted to say back then. Think about a situation that happened and it was hurtful, and it was just so shocking and so triggering. You couldn't think logically. And so you didn't say a lot. In fact, as you left the situation, you probably wish you had handled it differently or said something differently or done something differently. Well, it's time for you to acknowledge that. Write it down. I just write the letter to your mom or your brother or your sister or your friend or your therapist or your coach, right? Telling them what you really wanted to say at that time, not what you think about it, what you wanted to say. So let me give you an example. So let's say your parent was unfairly accusing you, yelling and screaming and name calling and just in an abusive energy, right? More than likely you didn't stand up for yourself. Or even if you did, you didn't fully express what you wanted to express. So you probably folded inward, right? And dissociated, or you may have lashed out and fussed. But what did you really want to say? You never said that. Number one, because back in the day, you didn't say what you wanted to say to parents. So likely you swallowed it, right? So what we want to do is get that back out because there's a self in there that is not expressed. We want to give you some freedom of expression where that self didn't have it before. So it sounds like this. It doesn't sound like I feel you should have done better and I feel you should have supported me. That's not the point of view. You need to go into the point of view of the self that experienced it. And it most likely sounds like this. I hate you. You make me sick. I get so angry every time you. It usually sounds like that. Okay. So that's where you want to write from. You want to acknowledge the anger that that self felt or the grief or the disappointment. And the way that you acknowledge it is you give yourself the freedom of expression. Express the things that you didn't say back then. Don't say it to the person you feel has hurt you because that's not really going to bring you far at all. Write it on some paper, say it in your voice memo, write the letter and let a friend read it. The second part is outside acknowledgement, right? So you acknowledge that there are some things that you really want to say and did want to say that you never said, right? So it's throat work, throat chakra work. So you're going to give that self permission to express it. Write the letter from the point of view of the being you were when you experienced the situation. Let me know if that makes sense. That's the first part. We're walking through a process of forgiveness that leads to resolution within you rather than hoping you forgave or wanting to forgive or realizing years later you haven't or trying to force yourself to move in some kind of way that you don't really feel like you want to move in concerning people. I'm trying to lead you on in a process, right? Hey, String Alchemist, how you doing? So let me know if that makes sense so far. The first part, right, in resolving something from your past that was hurtful and involved another person is self-acknowledgement. When the situation happened, what did you want to say? What did you want the person to know? What did you feel? All of that needs to come out in a very real and thorough way. It may come out with curse words. It may come out with profanities. It may come out with anger, right? It may come out with tears. But you need to write in first person. I felt this. I wanted this. I hoped. I thought, right? First person, I language. I felt. I wish. I hoped. I thought. I concluded. This is an important step, right? And so once you write that, the next part is having someone else witness you in it, okay? Witness your emotions. There's power in having your emotions witnessed. It's one thing to cry by yourself, right? But it's another thing when you have a person witnessing the experience and actually just offering presence. They're not validating necessarily. They're not offering empathy necessarily. It's powerful, Pat, right? But they're offering presence. Their presence is saying, this part of you is important. How this part of you feels is important. What this part of you has to say is important. How many times you tried to have someone witness your experience and they said, "Oh, girl, you still worrying about that? Oh, man, you just need to let go. It's time for you to move on. That was 50 years ago. That was 20 years ago." That evokes more pain, right? And conversely, to have someone witness you in a deep way and say, and just say to you, yes, you had that experience and I hear it. Hey, Jerron. Yes, you had that experience and it's important. So Cornell says makes sense, especially when you are no longer have access to the source. Right, right, right. But you want answers. That's the other thing. Cornell, thank you for that. Because what we often want are answers, right? But we can't get the answers if we never really say what it is we felt, thought, etc. I'm not saying say it to the person. It is not time to say it to the person. It's time to say it to someone who can hold space for you. And so I want to take some moments to validate the experience. The experience you had was valid, whether or not the facts are accurate, whether or not their intentions are included. That's not where we're at right now. That comes later in the process. Right now, what I want to say is your experience is valid. Your anger is valid. It makes sense. Your disappointment is valid. Your fear is valid. The way it still affects you to this day is valid. That's why you're going to write it down in this first person format. I feel, I felt, I wish, I wanted to say. You need to say what you wanted to say to that person on paper. You need to bring it from the realm of the soul into the seen, heard, and felt realm. And one way you can do that is by journaling. One way you can do that is sharing your journal. Do not ever share this part of your process with the person you feel participated in the hurt. Don't do that. It's not time for that. Because likely it's going to come out with a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, a lot of bitterness, and they're going to go into defense. And the more they defend, the more hurt you will feel in addition to what you already felt and experienced. Does that make sense? And I'm taking my time to comb through this process because I know someone needs it. Now, if you want some personal help with this, I do offer one-on-one coaching, and you can find me on my website at veronicamarie.com. All right, so you know where to find me. So far, so good. And so Carnell brought up something that is super important, the questions. Every hurtful situation will cause your soul to ask questions. Why did they do it to me? Why did they see it that way? What were their intentions? Did they really love me? Were they real? All of these questions. Why me? Why didn't they choose me? Why did they choose to do something else? This is called soul speak. Your soul is speaking. Your soul is asking these questions and you need to get them answered. But you think you need to get them answered by the person who offended you or who hurt you or who betrayed you. But no, that's not it. Not at first. And especially, like Cornell said, you may not even have access to them anymore. They may no longer be living, or they may be somewhere where you can't find them, or you're not talking. What you gonna do? Call them up and be like, remember 30 years ago you hurt me and I want you to hear what I have to say? They probably not. But there are ways to heal without demanding acknowledgement and without demanding all the things that you're not getting anyway. Okay, so you need to write down your questions also. What questions did you have back at that time? Now, something that most people do that I don't want you to do is when you're writing this information, you go back and you correct it. Don't do that. Don't self-correct. Don't suppress this self. Don't change how this self feels. Don't do all the things that you don't want other people to do. Don't do that. So if someone else was talking, if you were talking to someone else telling them how this affected me and that affected me, and they said, well, you should be over it, you wouldn't like that. So don't say that to yourself. If you were talking to someone and they said, you just need to push through and you just need to do this, and if you wouldn't want someone else to say that to you, then don't say it to yourself. Okay? Don't treat yourself in ways that don't allow you to express. And a lot of people do this. You write something down and you go back and go, no, well, they didn't know better, so I shouldn't say that. I should say. Or you say something and you go back and correct and go, but I love them. It's just that. Don't do that. Because likely when you were going through the situation, you weren't thinking like that. So don't do it to yourself now. Okay? And most of the time when other people are behaving in these ways toward you, you are most likely doing it to yourself also. All right? So when you are acknowledging how you felt, what you thought, questions that you had, you're going to write them down. I'm leading you in a process of forgiveness. Thank you, Tawanda. Write your questions down. Your soul needs answers to those questions. Hey, Busy Bee. And it doesn't matter how silly you think the questions are. It doesn't matter how immature you think the thought process is. That self is speaking and deserves to be heard by you. So you're going to take the time to write this. And the reason I say write it or put it in your voice memo, because the second part of this is going to be allowing someone else to witness you. Witness your pain without correcting it, without judging it, but witnessing because it deserves to be heard. Witnessing because it deserves to be expressed. Witnessing because you deserve to resolve this and stop walking around with it in your system. This is the first part. It's not the only part. Some people walk around and they just want people to listen to them vent and they never move forward. Some people want you to just hear what their experience was, but they never move forward, right? And so I'm stressing that this is not the only step, but this is the first part. I'm trying to help you move in forgiveness that actually feels healing to you and not forced or something you have to do because you want to be right with God, or you want to do it because your family or your friends expect it, or because you want it for yourself. We need to heal thoroughly. And this is the first part, right? So tap the screen. Let me know if you're still here for this talk. If you're new here, my name is Veronica Marie, and I am an emotional wellness coach, among other things. So today I'm here talking about forgiveness in a deep way. Forgiveness begins with a decision. I want to forgive, but it doesn't stop there. That's step number one. Okay? It's a decision, yes, but it's also a process. And if you don't go through the process, let me say this. The length of the process depends on how deep the pain is. If it's something trivial like somebody was late or something like that, then you probably could just make the decision to forgive and move on, right? You decrease it in importance. You talk about it. You feel satisfied. You move on. But when we're talking about deep pain, then just making a decision to forgive is not going to be the only step. There's more. It's a process, right? And so you're not forgiving for the other person. I made a video about forgiving on YouTube, and a person responded and said, why is it always up to the victim, hey James, to forgive? Why is it always up to the victim to forgive, right? And somebody responded by saying something like, forgiveness is for you, or whatever we use with the cliches. And so what I believe is that you're forgiving, you're going through this process because it heals you. This is not about releasing someone from their responsibility. Move forward. Yes, Robert. This is not about releasing someone from responsibility. This is not about releasing someone from accountability. This is not about positive thinking or getting over it. No. It's about resolving energies within you that still affect you to this day in ways that don't feel good. Right? Thank you. Thank you. That's what this is about. You forgive because it's healing. You forgive because it brings you forward in your wholeness. You forgive because it allows you to create rather than be held hostage within that place within yourself. When you don't forgive, you're contracted in that area. And whenever something similar happens, a memory, a smell, a sight, or something, you will reactivate the pain. Do you enjoy that? No. So, forgiveness is about bringing yourself into more joy, even though you've been through hard places. Let me know if that makes sense, because y'all went quiet on me here. I see String Alchemist is still here. Are we on the same page? Right? So going back to the process, you have now acknowledged what you wanted to say and you've written down the questions. You're going to allow another person to witness you. If you want to have yourself be witnessed in coaching, sign up for a coaching session. If you have a friend who can witness you, just read it. That's all. Just read it and go, wow, that's real. Wow, that's deep. Wow, that's a lot. That's what you want. Someone who is going to do that. Okay? That's step one, self-acknowledgement. Now, I want you to look at the questions that you had, because the questions that you had back then, your soul still is carrying that same load of wondering now. Okay? When you answer soul questions, it's important to understand that your soul is not just looking for truth. Your soul is not just looking for any truth. Your soul is looking for a particular truth. It's like a key and a hole, okay? Divine Rising T. And so if you use the wrong key for a lock, it's not going to open the door. And I'm going to give you an example of that in a minute, right? So you want the truth that soothes the soul, that particular part of you that experienced that particular thing. Let me give you an example. So many of us have experienced hurtful situations with parents, right? And so some of the questions you might have asked within yourself, these are energetic questions, because usually we had questions before we even knew how to ask them. That's how I know that it's energetic, right? We got this energetic giving and receiving, asking and receiving thing going within our souls, right? And so if you had problems with your parents where they treated you unfairly, or they treated you in some abusive manner, some hurtful way, you might have wondered, why are they doing this to me? What have I done to provoke this level of anger? Why can't I get it right? How can I fix this? Right? Those are likely some questions that a child might ask going through a painful situation with a parent. Those questions are still within you. Those questions are still within you. So if I say I need to answer the question with truth, I might say something like this. You know, your parents didn't know any better. They came from a generation that didn't believe in healthy parenting. They didn't have access, right? I could say all of those things, and none of that would soothe a particular part of yourself. None of it. That is the truth, but it's not the truth needed to answer that question and to soothe your soul. It's not the right key. That is a truth, and that is a truth to look at. But if it doesn't soothe your soul, then it is not the truth that your soul needs to resolve this energy. Does this make sense? Your soul is interested in truth, and there's layers and levels to truth, and that might not be it. If yourself didn't settle down and feel, what does it feel like when your soul is soothed? What does it feel like when a question is answered? We're talking about healing. Your soul relaxes. You can literally feel the release within you. Something feels lighter. Some aha moment happens. Something lifts. Something shifts, and you go, oh, that's it. That's it. That's how you know you had the right key. That's how you know you applied the right truth. You know you didn't apply the right truth And I'm talking about the right truth for that part of yourself that is asking the question. You know you didn't come to the right truth when the soul, when you give the answer to the soul and the soul goes, yeah, but still, when the soul offers a rebuttal against a truth, when you're trying to forgive, then that's not the one you need. That is a truth. Keep it, put it in your back pocket. But we're talking about healing a particular self who had a particular experience, had particular questions that are unique to that particular situation. And just any truth is not going to cut it. So, can you see how you can't just get over it? Can you see how they can't just get over it? Can you see how just making a decision to forgive may not lead to forgiveness right away? Can you see, hey, Elliot, can you see how forgiveness is a process, not just a decision? So you're going to have to take some time and search for the truth. I call this truth perspectives. When something happens, there are many different perspectives. Some of those perspectives are going to lead to disempowerment. Some of those perspectives are going to lead to empowerment. Some of them are going to cause you to be neutral. A lot of times, people want to move from a disempowered perspective all the way to an empowered one. And it's too much, right? For example, if I just say, well, your parents didn't know, you just got to forgive them and just move on, that's moving from disempowered to empowered. That's too much. Maybe you need to move from disempowered to neutral. What is the truth that at least causes you to calm down a little bit in that area? That's the question. Okay. So instead of saying, well, your parents didn't know better, and you're like, yeah, but that hurt me. Yeah, but that affected me. Yeah, but they still XYZ, whatever it is. You need to write that down too. Write down your rebuttal to the truth. Notice sometimes you're helping people and they haven't come to a truth that they can receive, so they resist your advice. Have you ever noticed that? Because you're not on the level of the truth that they need. Maybe you're up here and they need to be down here, or maybe you're here and they need to be up there. I don't know. But when something happens, there are many different perspectives. And the perspective that is going to resolve that self in the memory that you're bringing up at that time has a specific fit, a specific frequency. What is that frequency? Sometimes the perspective is that shouldn't have happened to you. That's true. And sometimes just feeling someone say that can settle that self down. Sometimes it doesn't. It's not enough. Sometimes you need a person to say that shouldn't have happened to you and they were wrong about you and that mattered because it affected your life. I could see that. And you deserved more. Right? Yes, sometimes it's validation that will offer the truth. But a lot of times validation is not enough. However, it's a point to start, right? So I would validate before I move into, well, your parents didn't know, and that's your mama, that's your daddy. You just got to realize they just like that, and you got to love them anyway. That ain't going to really work in the soul when you have had deep pain, all right? So moving on from this process. So you have self-acknowledgement, right? That ain't it. And then you have allowed someone else to acknowledge that self. Now that self is feeling seen. That self is feeling heard. I want you to ask yourself, do I feel good about this or do I need more? You ever said something to someone and then for days later you wanted to say more and more and more? Let the more and more come. Write it down. Ask them to listen again. A lot of times people are repeating their same stories over and over again because that self has not been fully acknowledged yet. A lot of times a person will repeat the same story over and over again over time because that self doesn't feel fully acknowledged. The questions are not answered. They came to a truth, but not the truth. So they keep repeating it. That does happen. And so, if you feel good about what you have gotten out and how you have been witnessed, this is self care. This is self care. Then we can move on to the next part. But if you don't feel acknowledged, not understood, but at least acknowledged, is this person acknowledging that it was hard? Is this person acknowledging that this mattered? Is this person acknowledging that I didn't deserve this? Listen, you see how deep this is? Do you understand why the person who offended you can't participate in this yet? Because they're not going to give you any validation or any acknowledgement if they don't see it the way that you saw it. And that's why I always say to people, your first step in acknowledging your emotions is not go and tell the people what you have to say unless you're ready to get more pain going. I don't suggest that people just go unleash their throat chakra on the person who hurt them. It's not wise. It doesn't work well. That you more than likely are going to ignite a defensive energy in them. And then you're going to feel madder because you're going to be like, and they still, right? But you got to look at the energy you're coming in. That's not where we're at right now. Okay? So next, if you don't feel satisfied, go write some more and go ask that friend to read it again. A lot of times in coaching, people approach the same scenario over and over again, and they'll say, I feel like you're going to get tired of me bringing this up. And I say, absolutely not. You need to bring this up as many times as necessary, because every time we strip off another layer. Because every time there's another nugget that comes from this. So you can repeat this as many times as you need. Because every time you repeat it and you receive a truth that you need, that part settles down, but there's still more. And that's okay. It's levels and layers to it. So when a person is repeating themselves to you, understand why that happens. Sometimes you're given a truth that they're not ready to receive, so they can't receive it. Right, the problem cannot be the solution. Sometimes you're giving them a truth, but it's not the truth that they need, and you're blaming them when they're asking you to help them. I just flipped the switch on y'all. Did y'all see that? When you're helping other people when they are continuing to bring the same thing up over and over again, and you feel like I done told you what to do already. I gave you the truth. And you just keep coming back. I don't want to hear it anymore. Well, you don't have to hear it anymore. But one thing you don't need to do is create that resentment within yourself. You gave them a truth, but it wasn't the truth that they needed. There's levels to it. So you got to consider, did you actually work through that process with them, or did you try to just throw a truth out them? They didn't want to receive it, and so you got frustrated. I flipped the switch a little bit, but grab what you need from it. Okay. All right. So again, if you don't feel fully fleshed out, fully heard, fully acknowledged, I didn't say fully resolved. I say fully heard. Did they hear you sufficiently? Do you have more to say? You know how when you're telling someone something and you go, and I want to tell you this too. And one more thing. Oh, and I want to add that. Do all of that with them. Set up a space for it. Ask them, are you in a space? You always, when you want someone to witness something with you, you always need to ask, do you have space to witness something that could be potentially emotionally heavy, right, with me? And what I need is just for you to read this and just have the experience with me. Or what I need is just for you to sit here while I read it to you. And I just need to be heard. Because back then I couldn't be heard. And right now I'm doing the work of processing forgiveness. And I'm at the part where I just need to be heard. That's all. A lot of times you're trying to just be heard by people when they're not in a space, number one. You're trying to just be heard by people who do not know how to handle what we call a vent. You're trying to just be heard, but you're not clear that or you don't make it clear that you just want to be heard. So when they start advising you, you get upset, right? At this point, you need to ask a person, can you witness me in this part of my process? In this part of my process, I'm not really trying to solve the problem. I'm going to move toward that. But in this part, I want to be heard, seen, and acknowledged. I want to know that someone outside of me can hear this, right? I want to know that someone outside of me can see how hurtful this could be. That's the part. All right. So, but now, if you feel satisfied, like I feel acknowledged, I feel heard, yes, it's still in my system, but I'm happy that I said that to somebody because I never said any of that to anyone. If you feel comfortable that you have said what you needed to say, the next part is now going to begin the examination piece. Okay. Notice that you are doing for yourself what you wanted that other person to do. You're doing that first before you go to them and demand that they listen and demand that they be accountable and responsible. You're actually giving it to yourself first. So when you do approach the situation, you go full. In your full empowerment, in your full understanding, in your full self-care, and in your full divine support. Okay, see you later, right? Full. You want to go to them when you're full, not when you're empty or below empty, not when you're down in the pit. When you're down in the pit, you need validation, seen, heard. First, do it for yourself, then allow someone else to do it, all right? So now we're going to start this self-examination, right? And how did my experience change my mind? That's a good question. How did that experience change my mind and my mindsets? What shifted? Okay. Did your confidence shift? Did your trust shift? Did you shift into fear away from confidence? Did you go into more fear? What did you conclude? That's another way of asking that. A lot of times when hurtful situations happen, you begin to make agreements with yourself. You begin to say to that self, your present self says to that self, you know what? We're never going to love like that again. And the self goes, yeah, don't do that. Agreement. It's a vow. When you break your own vows energetically, you have difficulty, okay? Because there's power in agreement among selves inside of you. If you imagine if you had a lot of selves that experience betrayal, so then your current self says to all those other selves, we're never doing that again. And all 1,000 of them go, yeah, no, we're never doing that again. So then you don't know that you made the agreement because you made it in a moment of unconsciousness. Let's say several years into the future, you meet somebody who's really good to you, right? But yourselves won't let you risk it because you made an agreement. You said you wasn't doing this no more. Look. And so they will begin to bring up all of the reasons why you shouldn't love hard, why you shouldn't open up, why you shouldn't trust. And it's going to feel really strong within you, and you're going to have difficulty doing it. So you wind up sabotaging something here because something back here is still unresolved, right? So that's why we got to look at how it shifted you. What conclusions did you draw? What vows did you make to yourself. Does that make sense? You got to look at the agreements. Because you didn't say, I'll never trust this person again. You said, see, this is why I'm not trusting people. You made a general rule. You made a vow. You had a hard experience and you generalized. That's what children do. That's what unconscious minds do. They don't say, in this situation, this is what happened, because they go, I'll never do that again. I'll never fall hard again. I'll never give to that capacity again. I'll never open my heart like that again. I'll never be that honest again. I'll never. You got to look at your agreements, right? What did you agree within yourself to shift into? You need to write them down. When this happened, I said I would never. When this happened, I began to think this is whatever. It shifted how I saw myself. It shifted how I saw people. I began to see people like this. I began to fear this. I began to hope this. I began to long for that. You need to write that down. I'm talking about deep self-acknowledgement. When you want to forgive, you're going to have to forgive on several levels and layers. And let me tell you this, while it's coming to my mind. Some people try to forgive themselves, and I don't really like that concept. I don't really like that concept, because someone said, forgive yourself for not knowing you deserved more. Wait, what? That doesn't need forgiveness. That needs grace. You didn't do anything wrong by not knowing something. But this is a culture that places a premium on knowledge, and so you think if something is done wrong, if something is different, or you don't have knowledge, you need forgiveness. No, you don't. What are you forgiving exactly? And I always liken it to this. It's like having a kindergartner who is just learning the basic rules of arithmetic. 2 plus 2 is 4. So when the kindergartner gets in the second, third, fourth grade, does he need to forgive himself because he didn't understand multiplication? No. It was part of the process. If we believe that life is about evolution, then you must understand that the divine of life is moving us from point A to point B, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's nothing wrong with you at point A, and there's nothing wrong with you at point B, C, D, E, F, or G. So what exactly are you trying to forgive when you didn't know? I could see, I don't like it this way either, but I could see if you knew that something was detrimental, but you did it anyway. But even that is still not really knowing deeply. So instead of focusing on forgiving yourself, and that's why it doesn't work, you still keep feeling some kind of way about the thing, because you don't need forgiveness. Grace is the balm. Grace. Grace says that it's the energy of, I know you didn't know that. How could you have known that? Right? Life is designed like that. The divine leads us on this path of evolution, and there's always something that we don't know. And even though you didn't know it, you're still smart. You're still spiritual. You're still beautiful. You're still lovable. Right? You didn't know. That's grace. Forgiveness is saying you didn't know and you did something wrong by not knowing, and you need to forgive yourself for not knowing. No. You need grace. You need softness. Right? We're not letting ourselves off the hook of responsibility, but we're acknowledging what is true. When I was 20, I did not know that when people show XYZ behavior, it means this. I didn't know that. It would be like your 2-year-old reaching up and touching the stove, talking about you need to forgive yourself for touching the stove. What? We all agree that that's how we learn, right? So a lot of times you're trying to forgive yourself for things you don't need forgiveness for. And and take a breath right here and breathe deep in him. A lot of times, hey Thug Brad, a lot of times we're trying, yes, Maze, grace. Grace is the balm that soothes, right? Let me go here real quick because Maya, let me go here right quick. I had this teapot that I loved. It's glass. I love glass things, okay? And I like thin glass things. And I have 4 children, right? So I had this teapot. It was so pretty. And it had the little teacups. You see how I loved it, right? So one of my children broke it. Oh, they knew how much I loved that teapot. And so the person who broke it was in a lot of shame and a lot of regret. I'm so sorry. Would you forgive me? Would you forgive me? Please, I didn't mean to do it. I know how much you love that. I'm sorry. I'm going to buy you another one. Da 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 da. And I said, I don't need to forgive you for that. Listen, babe, we break things all the time. I've broken one of them, right? And it's not about your intention. I know you didn't intend to do that. So this is not about your character, right? Because a lot of times we go, I didn't intend, because people are going to villainize your character when you do something, right? Sometimes you villainize people's character when they do something. Hey, Dia, how you doing? Right? I didn't want to forgive that person. I wanted to offer grace. I said, come here, sit down. Put my hand on their shoulder. I was like, look, what's important to me is how you feel, not that tea kettle, because I can buy another one. And I will buy another one. And if that one breaks, I'll buy another one. But you didn't do anything wrong. As humans, we drop things. As humans, we knock things over. This is how it is. And they begin to calm down. Really? You okay? I am okay. Now, forgiveness would have had that person still hanging on to that. Oh, she forgave me, but I broke it. She forgave me, but I broke it. You see, oh, I feel so bad still, even though she forgave me. Have you ever experienced that? But grace adds the balm. Grace adds the perspective. Grace takes away that heaviness. You need grace within yourself for yourself. This is not absolving you of responsibility. This is not positive thinking. It's a deep, energetic, spiritual practice. A lot of people think we need altars to be spiritual. Sage, Palo Santo, candles, crystals, and such. A church. The spiritual practice is within you as the divine. And grace is a divine energy, right? It says, yes, you did that. Yes, it happened, but you didn't know. And that energy will soothe a lot within you. But people who beat up on themselves, people who look back on themselves in shame, age with grace, Ashe. Imagine aging with grace, right? Imagine that. As opposed to needing forgiveness for everything and apology for everything. Imagine that. How much softer we might be within ourselves and with others, right? All right. So you need grace. I just kind of went on that tangent because it came. Let's go back into the process. Y'all still with me? Let me know if you're still with me. We're on the part of the process where you did your first expression, the person received it, you felt satisfied, you felt witnessed. Now we're looking at how the situation shifted you. How did it shift you? How did you change? What conclusions, what vows did you make? Okay, now I'm adding to that. Where do you need to apply grace to yourself, right? Because grace is going to unlock some of those agreements. Hold on a second. I'm doing a little TikTok puzzle thing. Grace is going to unlock some of those agreements. All right. Hey, Queen Goddess. Grace is going to unlock some of those agreements that you made with yourself, because when you begin to realize that you didn't do anything wrong, then you're not going to place emphasis on not doing it again. So that self doesn't have to keep you safe anymore, because then you realize from an empowered point of view, yet when I was 20, when I was 19, when I was 15, I didn't know this. And so I concluded that. And so I made an agreement with myself when I was unconscious about what I know now. But now that I know this X, Y, and Z, I no longer need this agreement. I didn't know, and that's why I made it. And for a time, that agreement kept me safe, but I'm going to bid it farewell. Thank you, agreement of saying I will never love again because I was hurt. Thank you. You served me. You protected me at that time. I'm different now. Back then, I didn't know about alignment. Back then, I didn't know about my desires. Back then, I didn't know X, Y, and Z. Now that I've had the experience and I've grown, I no longer need this agreement. I no longer need to walk in fear of love, because I realize, here it is, love never hurt me. People are walking around saying love hurts. Love does not hurt. Toxic behaviors in people hurt. The way you think about a situation, the way you absorb it, that hurts. But love has never hurt. People do hurtful things. I interpret things in hurtful ways, but none of that is love. All of that is the way your brain is working and their brain is working. So you used to think that love hurts because back then you didn't know all the things that I'm talking about right now. So I can release this now. Thank you for serving me. Thank you, self, for using it to my benefit. Hey, Z, but now I release it. I no longer need it. Now, what do you believe now? That's the next part. What do you believe now? What have you learned now that is different from what you knew then? What do you believe now? Or what do you want to believe now? You got to find what you want to believe now, okay? So you can't just release that and say, I no longer believe that. You need to come into what I believe now, what I want to believe now. How do you choose a belief? You choose a belief by the outcome you want, okay? So, for example, let's say the agreement that you're releasing is love hurts. So you had vowed never to love again because you didn't want hurt. Hey, Alpha Bear. Okay. So now you know that you want a love that is free flowing, that you want a love that is healing and soothing. So now what you believe is that I can create a free flowing love. I just need to know the ingredients. I need to put myself in the space of some teachings or some person who is operating in that. I need to learn. You see, you move from fear to empowerment. Back when I was 15, I didn't know how to create easy and flowing love. But now I'm learning. You see, that's the empowerment. A lot of times when you're in a disempowered energy, you cannot resolve anything. Therefore, forgiveness, the process doesn't go through. It comes back declined like a credit card. Your transaction has been declined. You have not forgiven. Okay, I'm trying to lead you in the process. You need to decide what you believe or what you want to believe based upon what's true, also based upon your desires. And then comes the practice. Now you're going to live by what you have begun to program yourself into. You're going to live by that. So every time that old memory comes up and that old neural circuit wants to activate, you go, the truth is, and you tell the truth that soothed you. Now, sometimes you're going to find that you need another truth. It's time to go through the process again. You're going to ask yourself, okay, at some point that truth did stick, it did hold. What other truth do I need to come to in this scenario? You see, this is a process. What other truth do I need? Notice I didn't say, I forgave, I'm moving on, I'm not going through that again. I forgave, I'm going to put this out of my mind, I have to control my thoughts. No, Grace, what other truth do you need? Right? And so you're going to go through the process again. What do you want to say? What are you still struggling with? What area still is unclear here? This is the process of bringing yourself into the levels and the depths of forgiveness. The word forgiveness is not a one-stop shop, one-time thing. Forgiveness is a process. It's a spiritual practice. It takes you into the depths of your soul and also into the depths of the soul of the other person. And notice, in this process, you still have not talked to the person who has offended you. Okay? So, once you have come to the truth, once you have started practicing it, now you might consider, do I want to mention it to the person? You want to mention it maybe, hey Flo, um, you want to mention it maybe because that person is still in your life. Maybe because you want to get closer with that person, but you couldn't while you had that there. Because you want acknowledgement, something like that, because the relationship matters. You've done all of this work, right? So chances are, by the time you start talking to them, you're not going to have such a negative edge on it. I'm not saying deny what happened or what you think they did or experienced, but I'm saying you're not coming out with, you're going to acknowledge and you're going to be accountable. Now the energy is, hey Thomas, now the energy is, I've been doing some self-work in this area and I realized a lot of things, right? And there's still some questions that I have about XYZ situation if you're in a space to talk about them. All right. So before you talk to the person, there are a few things you must understand. Okay? A few things that you must understand. You have been doing this deep work. They haven't. So you need to have some realistic expectations on what you are trying to accomplish in this situation. What is the goal of this conversation? Is it that you just want to share with them how it affected you and what you've come to? Do you want them to answer some questions? But if the chances are, if you have gone through this process I've given you, you're probably not asking for acknowledgement. You're probably asking for a conversation. You're probably asking for dialogue. You're probably asking to share experiences, but you're not really looking for them to validate them because you have self-validated. Now, sometimes you will have self-validated and the person may get defensive and all of that, and you might find an additional layer in there. It's time for you to go back. It's not time to tussle with them. It's not time to try to get them to see. None of that. Because none of that is going to lead you to resolution. It's going to create more problems. The more they start denying, the more they do not acknowledge, the more stirred up you're going to become. And perhaps some of that old stuff that's not quite gone will start stirring up again, right? So you never want to get yourself in a space where you're asking for validation and acknowledgement before you've gone through it for yourself in a deep way. Never do that. That's not good self-care. Because if you bring it up to the person and they go into some toxic energy, some dysfunctional energy or something like that, you're going to be creating more problems for yourself. Self-validate. If you just popped on, listen to the replay, go back to the beginning of this live and bring yourself through this process if you're trying to forgive. So let me stop right there and pause. And I would like for y'all to tap the screen. Here's a question. Have you ever tried to bring something emotionally charged and heavy to a person who was instrumental in creating that hurt? And they just went into denial, they went into deferring, they started blaming you, flipping a switch, and then you started feeling guilty, or you started feeling like, dang, I shouldn't have brought that up, or something like that. That's a sign that you were not prepared for that conversation. Why do I say that? Because your preparation is your self care. And if you just go blindly into someone else's mind space thinking that they're going to receive it and they should receive it and things like that, you're going to end up in a lot of disappointment and more pain. So you go through this beginning process so that you can have the conversation and not be knocked off your pivot. Does that make sense? And so I'm going to wrap up here because I could talk for hours about this, and there's so many levels and layers to it. If you want some help with this, like you're thinking, hey, I need her to walk me through step by step, then I will do that, right? Sign up for coaching on my website at veronicamarie.com. I also have some books in my digital library that could help you not on the topic of forgiveness, but on other topics, right? But if you are expressing to a person and you get the energy that they're not open, or they feel defensive, or you feel in some kind of way that, hey, I don't think this is a good idea, do not proceed. It's not good self-care. Don't go past the line. Don't rip through the yellow caution tape. You know, when you walk in the store and they have the little signs that say slippery, and they show you if you step over here, you risk slipping. Okay? That's a warning sign. The warning sign in conversation is when you want to be understood or share, and you see the person has some kind of defense up. Do not proceed. Okay? You could say a lot of different things, and that just depends on the situation. But one of the things you should realize within yourself is that, my dryer, is that it's probably time to have this conversation another time. And maybe instead of having the conversation, you can have a conversation about the conversation. Because a lot of times you're ready to talk about someone and you may just bring something into their awareness and they're not prepared, right? So maybe you want to communicate about your communication. Hey, I've been thinking a lot about X, Y, and Z and healing through some things, and I want to talk about them with you. Are you open? And is there a time that we could set aside? That's better. Just sending a text, sending an email, going into their presence and starting to talk without setting the space is a recipe for disaster when you're talking about intense and deep hurt. Okay? Hey, Nova. Does this make sense? So that's it. That's where I wanted to go with this. I wanted to show you why forgiveness is not just one decision. It's an actual process. And I want to show you why you think you have forgiven, but you find later that you really haven't. There's a strategy to it. There's a process to it. And not many people know it. Don't let people tell you you need to just get over something. You can't just get over it. You need the process. Don't tell yourself to just get over it. You can't just get over it. You need a process. If you could just get over it, you would have been just got over it. I would have. Who wants to sit there and hold things that they're trying to let go of? Nobody, usually. Right? It was very helpful. Good. So when people tell you stuff like, oh, you need to just let that go, tell them, I understand what you're saying, and I will be in my process. That's it. You don't have to get mad, Adam. Because if they're saying something like this, they probably never been through a teaching like this. So they don't have a full understanding anyway. So why expend your emotional energy on a person that can't even think deeply about it? They can't even touch the tip of the iceberg, right? So you ain't got to get mad when you see that they're not receiving it or something like that, and they just like, oh, you too sensitive, you too this. Thank you for sharing your opinion, but I'm exactly where I need to be, and I'll be processing. That's it. You got to learn to stop giving your emotional energy to people who don't even think deeply about their own self in these areas. If they don't think deeply about themselves in this area, they're not going to think deeply about you in the area. So the depth that you crave, the depth of the acknowledgement and connection and stuff is not available. And you got to understand that. Just because you can explain it eloquently, just because you have the right words and you understand the process does not mean that they can or will. I know that I can explain my tail off, right? I can describe, I got the words, I got the strategy, I got the pattern, and I know the dynamic, and still I could be talking to a person who is not thinking deeply and they will still fuss and fight, right? Don't do it. Bring your energy back within and decide how you're going to move with that person, right? That's my advice when you're going through something as deep as forgiveness, all right? And that is it. Has anything I said today inspired you to do something different? I want to know. Has anything I said today caused you to think differently or see something from another perspective or move you farther along on your forgiveness journey? I want to know. If you're watching the replay, let me know in the comments, okay? T says absolutely. And I didn't expect to be here this long, let me tell you. But when the ball started rolling, I rolled with it because the word forgiveness was on my mind and my heart when I woke up this morning. It was confirmation, actually. So let us leave. I'm going to give you a frequency. We're going to take a collective frequency for the day. And the reason I'm doing this is because I was just putting my cards away and they all fell out of the box. And I was like, I'm going on my live and I'm going to offer a frequency. And then I was reminded about forgiveness. Okay. So let's pull a frequency and see where we're going today. All right. So the words here are struggle, overwhelm, defensive, and paranoia. That's right in alignment with what we just talked about. Okay. Paranoia, right, can come from experiencing a lot of hurtful situations where your reality was questioned a lot when you were young, right? And so you don't know who's against you, who's for you, who's on your side, who is not, who is a supporter, who is an enemy. You feel a difficulty in discerning, right? So one of the things you need to do in this case is get some help, right? You need someone to help you structure a reality that feels stable, that feels grounding, where your nervous system feels regulated. Usually with paranoia, some help is necessary, right? When you feel defensive, again, your past, your unresolved past will cause you to defend stuff that don't even need defending. It will cause you to interpret things as if someone is attacking you and they're really not attacking you. It will cause you to have a low tolerance for discomfort in conversations, right? So what we're going to do is stay away from defensiveness. Just because someone has an opinion about you doesn't mean you have to move in shame, doesn't mean you have to prove them wrong. It's just that they have an opinion. So maybe you can work on receiving other people's opinions about you as their truth, right? Overwhelm. We're not going to allow ourselves to get overwhelmed today. Make a to-do list, make a reasonable to-do list, cross off whatever is there and let the rest go until tomorrow. Question, what causes you to feel overwhelmed? Okay, stay away from that today. And struggle. Don't struggle with nothing and nobody unless it's going to lead to your greater good. Like a struggle in a workout, we gonna do that because we need it. But struggle with people against ideas and opinions and trying to prove your heart and things like that, no, that's not what you're doing today, right? One of the spiritual things that I've been practicing lately is accepting other people having their ideas and not thinking a thing about it, right? Because I hear a lot of ideas that are inconsistent with truth. I hear a lot of people creating harsh realities for themselves and blaming other people. I just hear a lot, right? But my spiritual practice is to let it slide off of me. Just, okay, that's your experience. I shake. I don't want to apply no thought to it. I don't want to apply reasoning to it. I don't want to apply perspective on none of that, right? And so my spiritual practice is deep allowance, allowing people to be in their spaces on their journey, and I don't have to think on it. I respect it. And more deeply, honor it. I honor their experience as something that they need, something that they need to experience, something that they need to create for themselves. Hey, Sunfire. And I don't need to shift it. I also don't need to think anything of it. I can hear it and release it. That's my spiritual practice. So stay away from struggle today, okay? And that is it. If you're watching the replay, please do tell me about yourself. Leave comments. This video is on YouTube. So if you just popped on and you wanted to hear about forgiveness and hear about the process that I just gave, you can find it on YouTube. Okay, visit my website and see how we can work together. Hey, pretty mama. All right, and that is it. So y'all have a beautiful day, and we'll talk soon.